connection tests for witnesses. I'm informing the committee that all witnesses have been completed and required connection tests in advance of the meeting. I would like to make a few comments for the benefits of members and witnesses. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. I would now like to welcome our witnesses for our first panel. Canadian Automobile Association, in person, Ian Jack, Vice President, Public Affairs. By video conference, Elliot Silverstein, Director, Government Relations, Insurance. The Insurance Corporation of British Columbia by video conference as well. Shabnam Afzal, Director, Road Safety. Kelly Eimers, Chief Actuary. Up to 5 minutes will be given for opening remarks, after which we will proceed with rounds of questions. I now invite Ms. Eimers and Ms. Afzal to make the opening statements, please.
Great. Thank you for welcoming ICBC to appear before this committee. My name is Kelly Eimers, and I am the Chief Actuary at the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia, or ICBC. With me is my colleague, Shabnam Afzal, who is ICBC's Director of Road Safety. I would first like to recognize that we are at ICBC's head office in North Vancouver, British Columbia, on the traditional ancestral Indigenous territories, both unceded and treatied, of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. ICBC is a provincial crown corporation mandated by the Insurance Corporation Act, Insurance Act, and the Motor Vehicle Act to provide universal compulsory auto insurance to drivers in British Columbia. In addition, ICBC provides British Columbians with optional auto insurance products, vehicle registration services, driver licenses services, and we work with external stakeholders on road safety projects and auto crime initiatives. I would like to applaud the work of this committee and all of the participants. We support the ongoing efforts to date and look forward to enhancing initiatives to prevent vehicles stolen within Canada. According to statistics provided by BC's Integrated Municipal Provincial Auto Crime Team, or otherwise we'll refer to as IMPACT, in 2023, BC had its lowest number of auto theft incidents across the province since 2018. BC had 7,538 auto theft incidents reported to police, a 10% decrease from 2022, with declines posted across the province. Theft of vehicles are covered under optional comprehensive insurance from ICBC or other private insurers. In 2023, of those 7,500 auto theft incidents reported to police, 6,255 of them were reported to ICBC with an average cost of $5,700. This average cost also includes the deductible for a stolen vehicle claim reported to ICBC. While there has been a slight decrease in stolen vehicle claims reported to ICBC from 2022, the average cost of these vehicles has increased. While ICBC has the majority of the optional insurance market, I want to emphasize that these are just claims reported to ICBC. Claims can also be reported to other optional insurance carriers, and some motorists may not even have optional insurance. Further, these preliminary financial figures and incident counts may continue to settle as claims are closed. And with that, I would like to pass it off to my colleague, Shabnam Afzal, who is ICBC's Director of Road Safety.
Thank you. So ICBC has partnered with the BC government on the Integrated Municipal Provincial Auto Crime Team, or IMPACT, as Kelly was just mentioning. And the mandate of this team is to actually fight auto crime. And we've partnered to successfully target chronic auto theft offenders and organized auto crime groups since 2004, the inception of IMPACT. IMPACT heads the successful provincial Bait Car program too, which also targets chronic auto crime offenders across the province. And 2024, this year, marks the 20th anniversary of the creation of the Integrated Municipal Provincial Auto Crime Team. And ICBC has been a funding partner since the inception of IMPACT. ICBC also has a dedicated Special Investigation Unit, otherwise known as the SIU, and we have an officer from our unit attached to the impact team. And they act as a liaison with other law enforcement in BC, as well as the other ICBC officers that are dedicated to the identification of cloned or revinned vehicles. Having these dedicated officers obviously helps us protect the integrity and minimize the risk of the vehicle registration process in BC. To further combat vehicle crimes, ICBC's SIU Detection Unit employs a dedicated team of specialists who leverage data and analytics to identify concerning theft claims. And ICBC has an internal fraud analytics model, which uses data and natural language processing to identify concerning claims for review. So we partner with local police and stakeholders on auto crime prevention initiatives, such as providing steering wheel locks and preventing catalytic converter thefts. ICBC also provides insurance incentives to encourage customers to use these passive electronic immobilizers to protect their vehicle. With that, I would like to defer to the committee and answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you both for your remarks. I now invite Mr. Jack or Mr. Silverstein, please.
It'll be me, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Hello, bonjour, Monsieur le Président, honorable.
Hello, Mr. Chair, honorable members. Thank you for having invited us to share our perspective on the fight against auto theft.
President of Public Affairs for CIA's national office here in Ottawa. My colleague Elliot Silverstein, our Director of Government Relations for Insurance, joins me virtually today to help answer your questions. Together, CIA and CIA Insurance represent the interests of 7.1 million motorists who are members of our not-for-profit association, whether that be AMA, BCAA, or CAA, and tens of thousands of auto insurance clients whose policies are with CAA Insurance. As such, we believe we bring a unique perspective to the issue of auto theft, informed by the practical, mental, and financial costs of the issue to all Canadians. Most of you, of course, will be familiar with the brand. Fondée en 1913, la CA.
Founded in 1913, CAA is a national federation that brings together multiple organizations, offering them insurance and voyage and travel opportunities.
And since then has provided dependable, fair, and trustworthy service to protect Canadians and what matters most to them. CAA was pleased to be the only consumer advocate invited to the federal government's February Auto Theft Summit to represent vehicle owners, who are the first line of defense in preventing auto theft and the most impacted in their daily lives when a theft does occur. However, the summit was just a first step, and now, nearly 3 months later, we are still waiting on some key elements of the national strategy that was promised. The subject is no less urgent today. We need to get going, and not just with the starter's pistol, but with concrete, short but reasonable timelines for results. As you know, costs from vehicle theft are rising astronomically, $1.2 billion in additional payouts in 2022. And these costs are being passed on to consumers in the form of higher premiums and, in some cases, vehicle surcharges of up to $500 if you happen to be unlucky enough to own one of the top 10 most stolen vehicles. We believe these costs will be significantly higher for 2023. To put this in perspective, the impact of auto theft for the insurance industry is the equivalent of a flood or a tornado, except it is occurring year-round and with no end in sight. Pour répéter, le vol de véhicule...
Again, auto theft is similar to a tornado for the insurance industry, except that this problem is not temporary, it's long-term.
If vehicle theft is not brought under control, auto-related costs will continue to rise for drivers already struggling with affordability issues. Insurance premiums, deductibles, and overall costs are likely to go up for everyone if auto theft rates remain high. We'd like to underscore that soaring auto theft rates are more than just a cost pressure for consumers, as important as that is. Les victimes de vol sont privées de leurs moyens de...
Those who are a victim of auto theft don't have a car to get to work or important meetings sometimes.
Replaced or having to trade down in this inflationary market in order to get a vehicle. And it has a mental toll as well. We're pleased with the actions taken to date by law enforcement and provincial and federal governments, but we need commitments with reasonable but aggressive timelines to further step up action to stem the flow of auto theft. Specifically, CAA calls on the government to empower CBSA to do more enforcement at ports, specifically the Port of Montreal, by upping boots on the ground, installing cargo container scanners, and prioritizing random inspections on exports, which today are virtually non-existent. Launch with a tight timeline, an update on vehicle anti-theft standards, which are now more than 15 years old. This technology is being exploited by criminals to easily steal vehicles. CAA has pressed for a quick consultation period so that the regulations can be revised with minimal, reasonable delay. Owners should not be left to incur the cost of installing expensive anti-market, anti-theft solutions to make up for inaction by the industry. Increase minimum penalties in the criminal code for repeat offenders. CAA was pleased to see that the budget acknowledged the need to enhance these penalties, but again, we would like to see action now, not in months or in years. Deliver more funding and better coordination and intelligence sharing among law enforcement agencies. We have already seen the fruits of this in recent weeks. We need to see more of it. Ce type de mesure, c'est affairer structure dans les derniers.
This type of measure will help, but we need more.
Authorities and responsibilities given to rail police in places such as Mississauga, and the resources CBSA devotes to these areas. Let us be clear. We understand everyone has a part to play in combating auto theft, including provinces, municipalities, local police, manufacturers, and others. More consumer awareness is also needed, and that is on us. Je vous l'assure, nous y travaillons.
I can assure you we have multiple initiatives underway on this front.
In the garage, if you have one, and using a Faraday pouch for your key fob at night can help prevent theft. And these are messages we are passing on. With that short introduction, Mr. Chair, I will close, but we welcome your questions. Merci encore de nous avoir invités à être ici.
Thank you again for having invited us to be here today.
We'll go right into our first round of questioning. And Mr. Caputo, I believe you're up first.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And my intention is to ask questions for a few minutes and then to move my motion, which was provided last week. So thank you all for being here. For the from our fine people from ICBC as a BC MP, thank you and welcome. And also for our people we have in person here, thank you very much for being here. I'm relatively new to the committee and still kind of getting a handle on all of this. But when I hear you speak, Mr. Jack, the question I'm curious about is, how did we get here? How did we get so complacent in that you described this as the equivalent of a flood or tornado? And I was quite happy to hear you have some tangible, but how did we actually get here to something that really is at a crisis level?
Well, it's interesting. Thank you very much for the question. 10 or 15 years ago, we understand when we look back and when we do research, there was a lot of auto theft in this country, and I think a lot of emphasis was put on it. And I think that since then, that emphasis has gone. That worked, then the emphasis went away. And I think that organized criminal gangs, they're like water. They're like a water leak in a house. They go to the path of easiest resistance. And I think now, for a variety of reasons, auto theft has become fairly easy. We have very lax standards that are not at all modern. We have iPod-era standards for anti-theft devices in vehicles right now. It's easy to get into a vehicle. It appears quite easy to put them into containers at rail yards and trucking containers where there doesn't appear to be enough oversight from our CBSA officials looking at exports. It appears very easy to get them onto ships and out. And I will note as well a couple of, to us, very interesting pieces of testimony. I can't remember if it's IBC or Equité, but they pointed out that you can, in Canada, the Canadian rules are you can change a ship manifest after it sets sail, which makes no sense. Nothing should be changing inside a container after it sets sail. But you can claim it's dishwashers, get it into waters, and then change that and say, oh, by the way, it's actually cars. Bye. That makes no sense. These are rules that should also be changed. There's also a 72-hour rule that we'd like to see that the U.S. has that says you can't change the manifest within 72 hours of shipping that makes sense to us as well. So a whole series of things have happened, I would say, to lead us to where we are today.
Okay, so a lot of this seems to me to be there are a lot of tangible issues and there are some regulatory issues, right? The regulatory issues relating to anti-theft devices and coming with the times, and then the tangible issues with prevention, compliance, and enforcement. Now, I assume at your level you've probably had some discussions with CBSA and groups like that. Is that accurate?
We absolutely have, yes.
And how have your suggestions been met when you have met with CBSA?
Well, I mean, the opening line was, well, we don't really do export inspections. We worry about imports. Sure, fair enough. I think the clear message from us, and I would hope from this committee, and I believe from some government officials at least, has been, well, no, that's not good enough. We need to do a lot better. I do know some dollars have been put aside for that, for CBSA, but I think we need a mentality shift. And they do actually need some dollars, I believe, because, at CAA, we've done tours of both the Montreal and Halifax ports. In recent months, we've met with port officials, and they have made clear they've described the CBSA inspection routines, and they don't really seem fit for the 21st century, if I may say. I'm no expert, but they need more and better facilities, and they need to be told to do more, frankly, on exports.
Thank you. How much time do I have, Mr. Chair?
You have about 2 minutes.
2 minutes? Okay. With that, Mr. Chair, I believe Mr. Kirk will be replacing me, but with that, I will move the motion, which was given notice last Thursday, I believe.
You have two motions, Mr. Caputo. Which one are you referring to?
Oh, I'm sorry. Notice of motion that starts with, given that continued instances of repeat offenses. That one, please.
Read the whole motion, Mr. Caputo, just to make sure.
Sure. Given, and this is quote, Friday, April 26, 2024, given continued instances of repeat offenses while criminals are out on bail, including the case of a man who was arrested for attempted carjacking, let out on bail, and was arrested for carjacking again the next day, comma, next point, that in the news release about this incident, the Victoria Police Department identified Bill C-75, bracket, the revolving doorbell, close bracket, as the reason this individual was released to then go on to commit the same offense within a day of the first. The committee concur with the findings of the Victoria Police Department that the Liberal government's Bill C-75, bracket, the revolving doorbell, close bracket, is adding to the challenges police departments are facing when combating auto theft, when offenders are expeditiously released back into the streets. And that's the end.
Thank you, Mr. Caputo.
Thank you.
Call for a vote. Mr. Genius, please. Sorry, I didn't see that. This is distance.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Caputo, for putting forward this motion and for his excellent work on this important issue. And I appreciate the opportunity to say a few words about the sad trajectory that rates of crime have taken in this country in the last 9 years, in the time that Justin Trudeau has been Prime Minister. We have seen how this NDP Liberal Trudeau experiment of catch and release policies in the area of bail has simply failed. We have many instances where, let's say, the same people are committing crimes over and over and over again. And someone commits a crime in the morning, they're released on bail, and they proceed to commit another crime in the afternoon, in the evening, and so on. And this is not a coincidence that all of a sudden Justin Trudeau becomes the Prime Minister, and suddenly people's dispositions towards criminal activity changes. No, it's a consequence of policy decisions that were made by this government that allow repeat violent offenders to have easier access to bail and to go out and commit crimes that harm our community. And that is why I think this motion is important, motion that was put on notice, and I hope we'll have the support of colleagues, that simply supports the findings of the Victoria Police Department that recognizes the failures in the Liberal government's Bill C-75, the revolving door bill, as it relates to bail. The motion responds to and recognizes the determinations of that police department that this revolving door bill is causing significant problems, making life more difficult for police officers and for everyday citizens, and making life easier for repeat violent criminals. So I appreciate the clarity of the motion, the fact that it responds to an evident reality in the government's record on crime. And crime statistics tell the story very clearly. Crime dropping up until 2015 and then rising dramatically after 2015. We all know what happened in 2015. It's been 9 years of failed NDP Liberal experiments on crime that haven't worked. It's time for a new approach. And I'll leave my comments there.
Mr. Couric, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I appreciate the motion that my colleague, Mr. Caputo, has moved. And let me share, if I could, just for a brief moment, some reflections that are not my own, but rather I would share some reflections that I heard over the course of the constituency week from some law enforcement professionals in my constituency. And to make sure that I protect them, I won't get too specific as to where they're from and which police force they're a part of, but suffice to say they police a large rural area, part of the region that I have the honor of representing. And Chair, the reason why it's so relevant is because it relates to the catch and release policies that that see a very small number of offenders, in many cases dangerous, violent offenders, being arrested time and time and time again for the same crimes. You have small communities, and as an example, in the area that I represent, of several hundred people that are terrorized by a small group of people. Everybody knows who is perpetrating these crimes. The police know that that is in fact the case, and it is so frustrating, in fact demoralizing, to our hardworking men and women that wear police uniforms of various departments. I know this motion specifically references some of the specifics around the Victoria Police Department, and that's very, very valid, but it's an amplification of this message that we hear from so many law enforcement professionals. These are individuals that put their lives on the line every day to keep our communities safe. Yet they feel like they are the forces pushing back against them being able to do their jobs are catch and release policies like those that we see from Bill C-75. So, Mr. Chair, whether it's small towns across rural Alberta, whether it be in the north, whether it be in the Maritimes, whether it be in our big cities where we see cars sometimes the same day or just within a couple of days being shipped to overseas, this is a huge concern that I would suggest requires the continued urgency of this committee, and especially as we are hearing from those who are on the front lines, and I cannot emphasize that enough, Mr. Chair, those who are on the front lines that are facing the direct consequences of this. I could not imagine a more difficult career in today's world than being a law enforcement professional, being a police officer, with all the pressures, and then to have policies of their government working against their ability to do their job and protect the communities in which they live and work and care so deeply about. So, Mr. Chair, there is much more that I could talk about on this subject, but I would simply say this to my colleagues from other parties. Let's treat this with the urgency that Canadians are demanding that this committee treat it with. Let's pass this motion. It's a small step to acknowledge some of the urgency and how we can address auto theft and specifically the issues surrounding those repeat violent offenders that are in some cases within hours of being arrested, the hundreds of hours of police work that goes into those arrests, and yet being turned out within hours, and in many cases are back out on the streets committing those same crimes, endangering our communities, traumatizing individuals, and quite frankly, Mr. Chair, Canadians deserve better than what they're getting. So I hope that this committee seizes this opportunity to take a serious look at this issue with some of the information that is being brought forward by, in this case, the Victoria Police Department, to amplify that message that we are hearing from so many across our country. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Michaud, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I feel a little bit far away from you today, but I understand that this is a measure to improve the health and safety of our interpreters. So I'd like to thank the technicians who set this up to improve health and safety of those who help us do our job every day. So there was a motion tabled by my Conservative colleague on a carjacking, and all offenses related to the increase in auto theft concern us at the Bloc Québécois, and this is why I suggested that we undertake a study on this. And we are currently undertaking this study. We have witnesses who are here to talk to us about this. They took time out of their lives to share their perspectives and suggestions, and so out of respect for them, I would suggest that we come back to this study. Now, C-75 was debated during the 40th legislature. I don't think we need to vote upon the conclusions of a bill from a previous legislature, and so I think that we should come back to our work at hand.
Thank you, Ms. Michaud. Mr. McGregor, please.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I don't really have any skin in the game for this one, and I'm speaking as someone who did vote against C-75. I was present in the 42nd Parliament during the Liberal majority government. But I just find it curious that this motion is being brought forward when we're actually in the middle of a study on car theft. And I mean, I guess questions that come to mind are, why is this motion so necessary when we've got plenty of opportunity during the middle of this particular study to ask questions? And has anyone thought of bringing the Victoria Police Department or inviting them as a witness so we could ask questions to them? Because there's a lot of language in this motion which is asking us to go on good faith of the Conservatives, which in some cases is in short supply. So I just wanted to make those observations that there were probably other opportunities and more conciliatory ways of bringing this forward during the middle of a study on car thefts. So I'll just leave it at that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Genius, please.
I'd like to propose an amendment based on Mr. McGregor's excellent suggestion to add at the end of the motion the following, and invite representatives of the Victoria Police Department to appear before the committee for 2 hours.
Anyone else? No. Yep. Now we'll call for a vote on the amendment to the amendment. All those in favor? Raise your hand, please. Record a vote, sure. Mr. Clerk.
Ms. O'Connell.
No.
Mr. Biddle.
No.
Mr. Gay.
No.
Monsieur Chiffquet. Monsieur Chiffquet. Okay, no. Mr. McKinnon.
No.
Mr. Shipley.
Yes.
Oops. Mr. Junice.
Yes.
Mr. Mutz.
Yes.
Mr. Couric.
Yes.
Madame Michaud.
Contre.
Mr. McGregor.
I abstain.
It's defeated. 6-4 against 6. No, it's defeated.
So the motion is defeated. Okay. The amendment is defeated. And now, with no further discussion, we'll vote on the amendment, the original amendment.
Yeah, motion.
Motion. Sorry. Jeepers. All right. It's Monday. On division. No. Recorded vote? Someone say that over here? Go.
Ms. O'Connell? No. Mr. Biddle?
No.
Mr. Gay?
Nope.
Monsieur Chiffquier?
No.
Mr. McKinnon?
No.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Generous?
Yes.
Mr. Mutz?
Yes.
Mr. Corrick?
Yes.
Madame Michaud?
Contre.
Mr. McGregor?
Abstain.
Motion is defeated. We're going to continue now with our line of questioning, and I believe Ms. O'Connell, you're up.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for sticking through that. I want to start with you, Mr. Jack. Thank you. I think CAA has done a study, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the sense that they found 33% of Canadians who own vehicles have factory-installed anti-theft systems. And I want to know a little bit more, and you spoke in your opening remarks about these anti-theft systems, and it's somewhat unfair to put that on the consumer after they've already purchased the car. Are there certain manufacturers that you're finding that are harder to steal, who are putting in place some of these regulations? And I recognize the point you've made in terms of updating the legislation on anti-theft systems, and that it is quite dated. So are you seeing some manufacturers, because we've heard at committee that some cars are stolen far greater than others, and that some in the industry are making this headway. So do you have anything to add to that?
I'd like to turn to my colleague Elliot in just a moment on this. He's a bit more knowledgeable than I, but I'll make a couple of observations. I mean, I think what gets stolen is what's most valuable to potential buyers. And so I think that our criminal gangs put more effort into figuring out ways to steal some vehicles than others. That's one factor among many. I just wanted to take note of it. And I think the other point I would make is again, the importance of a national standard, which is a federal responsibility for new vehicles going forward, so that we don't end up with an ongoing game of whack-a-mole where maybe one manufacturer does do a better job, their vehicles stop getting stolen, but guess what? The theft just moves over to another sort of vehicle. So with those 2 points, I'll turn it over to Elliot. I don't know if you have anything to add, Elliot.
Thank you. It's a great question, and certainly we know that there are a lot of vehicles that are highly in demand. Part of the challenge that we faced is that the standards in Canada are grossly out of date. So, as we look at the industry as a whole, I mean, the challenge really becomes is that as some vehicles become tougher to steal, thieves are looking for vehicles that are in demand, and they'll move on to other ones. What we need to do is we need to update the standards so that all vehicles are safe, and that it shouldn't matter what make or model we're focusing on. But we tell Canadians that they know that their vehicles are safe, and we really need to update standards that haven't been looked at since 2007. And we really need to look at that as we approach 20 years, that there's a lot more that the industry can and should do, because Canadians should not be shouldering the costs of aftermarket costs to keep their vehicles safe when they're already paying a lot for those vehicles and other types of theft deterrents in their own home.
Thank you. And we've heard at committee, and Mr. Shifke's actually raised the point as well, that the increase of vehicle thefts in the U.S. is per capita. We're seeing the same trends. I was meeting with some of our U.S. counterparts at the border and ATF, and they are seeing this increase as well. Europe is seeing an increase. So while domestic politicians want to play games and try to blame certain legislation, we're actually seeing the increase around the world. And in New Zealand, I believe it is seeing the highest number of car thefts that they've experienced as well. So on the manufacturing anti-theft side, it's quite important that we also keep up with international standards, or else the value of stolen cars in Canada just goes way up.
Jurisdictions are acting on this as well. And so to your point, if we don't, or if we're slower, we will simply see more car theft in our country than in other jurisdictions. So I think, again, it's a very good argument to be moving as quickly as we can. And my only other observation, with great respect, is that Canadians drive vehicles in Canada and are worried about them being stolen here, not about New Zealand.
More of the point about if we are behind in making these changes, then and other jurisdictions update their anti-theft legislation, then we will be more vulnerable. And that's, I think, the point. So if I have a little time left, I'd like to ask a question to Ms. Evzal or Amers, whoever is better. I was actually just in BC this past weekend and doing a ride-along with the Chilliwack Police Service, and they had a bait car and talking about it, but they did actually talk about the fact that they're not seeing the increase of auto theft there and in BC, and this was the RCMP there representing kind of what they're seeing on the ground. Why do you think, or do you have any idea of why BC is not experiencing the same levels of auto theft?
Thank you for the question. I'll take that one. So one of the reasons that we're hearing from our law enforcement partners is that we have, there's a number of variables. Obviously, it's never black and white, so there's lots of gray areas, but we can say definitively that we feel the organized crime aspect of vehicle theft has not really reached BC so much. We have organized crime, all different types, but in terms of auto theft, we're not seeing that same rise in organized crime. And part of that may be due to the fact that our borders are connected and to different countries, obviously. So there's speculation, and not for me to say, obviously, but enforcement could answer these questions way better, but that we just don't have the same markets that the Eastern Canada has to be able to ship to. So the western side of Canada does not. Most of our vehicles that are stolen, they remain in Canada. And actually, we have a good rate, like 7 out of 10. That was the last I heard from our enforcement partners. 7 out of 10 vehicles are recovered. Also, the nature of the vehicles that get stolen here, it hasn't really changed to the most, the newer models with the anti-theft devices. It's really mostly still the older vehicles, and they're usually stolen from what we're told in the commission of a crime or those similar types of things.
Ms. Michaud, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our witnesses who are here with us today. Very much appreciated. Throughout this study on car theft, I tried to see what the causes were, to try to find solutions with different witnesses, to hear their suggestions of what the government can do to prevent this theft. For the benefit of my voters, I would like to speak to ICBC firstly, and then the Canadian Automobile Association on the impact that this has on Canadians when their car is stolen. More than $2 billion in insurance claims were made because of car theft in 2022. So what effect does this have on insurance companies and prices, given the auto theft issue? Of course, this does have an impact, but I would like to hear your opinion on this. When one's car is stolen, does this have an impact on increased insurance prices throughout the country? And if a car is stolen, how much can someone expect their insurance premiums to go up by? And for example, in Montreal, we saw that sometimes someone had their car stolen and when was able to get it back, and then months later it was stolen once again. So what does this mean for insurance companies? What type of calculations are you doing on this, and how does this affect Canadians? So if ICBC could speak to that, please.
Is it possible to repeat that question in English?
Je peux la répéter en français.
I can repeat it in French, but normally you should be receiving interpretation. I don't know if it was explained to our witnesses.
Timers, are you receiving interpretation? No?
She has to choose the channel.
Did you choose the channel at the bottom of your screen? There's a globe, I believe it is.
Ah, I got it.
You got it? Okay. You know what? Miss Michaud, you start over.
OK, merci beaucoup.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will start again, and if you don't, could you maybe give us a thumbs up if you're hearing translation? Great, thank you. So what I was saying is that since the beginning of this study, I've really tried to understand the causes behind auto theft in Canada, to look into different solutions, suggestions from our witnesses, be it from the police, border services, or the government, things that they can implement, regulations, new laws. But for the benefit of my voters and my riding, and given that you are here as insurance providers, I thought it would be interesting to show Canadians what impact that auto theft can have on them. We know that more than $1 billion was spent in insurance claims in 2022 because of this. So what impact does auto theft have on insurance premiums for someone who has never had their car stolen and for someone who has had their car stolen? What's the difference between these two cases? How does this work, and how does this have an effect on how you set your prices? And then I'll ask some more questions after this.
I can take the insurance part of it. If you do have a auto theft claim, it does not impact your insurance costs unless you have multiple claims in the last few years. So if you're having, I believe it's 3 or more, it will have an impact on your insurance costs. It actually will have an impact on the deductible that you pay. But otherwise, it's not your fault if your car is stolen. You will have, if you have an anti-theft device in your vehicle, we do provide a $100 rebate off your deductible if that device has been tampered with in the event of a claim.
Donc, si je comprends.
So if I've understood correctly, if there were several claims in the past several years, this could have an impact on their insurance premiums. Do these claims have to be related to car theft, or could it be something that's broken in the car? Any reason for the claim? If one's car is stolen in the future, this will increase the price of their premiums. Have I understood correctly?
If you have multiple thefts, it will increase the deductible. We go from a max, I think it's a minimum deductible of $2,500 if you do have multiple thefts in the last few years.
OK, je vous remercie.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jack, thank you for being here. You spoke about some very important things in your opening statement. For example, the fact that cars are easier and easier to steal nowadays. Do you feel that new technology has had a negative impact in this case? It seems that cars that have the old key system are more difficult to steal compared to new cars that use new technology. Someone can use their phone, for example, to steal something. So do you think that new technology creates a new risk for manufacturers?
On pense pas, je vais retourner.
Well, I'd like to give the floor to my colleague Elliot in just a second, but we can't go back in time. Has social media hasn't it had a negative effect on our teenagers? Yes, but it's the same thing for technology in cars. We have to move forward in any case. We have two-factor authentication for iPhones, for example. Elliot is our expert on this, so I'll give him the floor.
Thank you. I think when it comes down to it, the technology, a lot of people like it for convenience, but we're trading off the safety right now, and that's a big challenge because we are at a breaking point. We have the challenge of how frequent the thefts are happening. We have people that are struggling to find vehicles when they're stolen. So while people love the push button start and they love the convenience what's in their vehicles, we can't trade off the safety aspect. The fact that the standards have not been updated in nearly 20 years, the fact that when people are having to get new vehicles, they're facing higher interest rates when they're buying a new car. They're facing higher prices for the new cars. They're having their family life disrupted because they can't get rental cars. I mean, all these pieces come together. Is the technology a blessing or a curse in some ways? I mean, people love it, but it's also been a bit of the driver for the challenges we face. And I think that, we need to make sure that standards are updated because safety should be paramount for everybody.
Je vous remercie. Monsieur Jack.
Thank you. Mr. Jack was saying that we have face recognition in our phones, for example. Why don't we have this for cars? I explained to other witnesses that when I park my car here, I have a notification on my phone that confirms to me where I parked. Why couldn't we have this type of notification when someone starts the car and we are not the ones who started it? I would imagine that wouldn't be too difficult to implement. I think car makers need to do more because we have heard from automakers here and they say that it's the fault of organized crime, that the government and police services need to do more. But do you think that automakers also have their role to play in this?
I'll speak on this. I think that automakers play an important role in this. We've talked to our members, and we've also done public polling, and we know that over 80% of those surveyed feel that manufacturers need to do more. We know that it is a challenge, and certainly organized crime is a component of this, and everybody plays a role in this, whether you're an insurer, government, law enforcement, but manufacturers as well, and we all have to play that important part. At the end of the day, I mean, two-factor authentication is important, but when we hear that we about proprietary issues and other challenges like that, we have other industries like banks that have been able to keep their proprietary pieces in order and still ensure the safety of their industry. We need to do the same here for Canadians because a vehicle is somebody's second largest purchase outside of their home, and we need to have the standards and the security up to date to make sure that they have the peace of mind that their car is going to be there in the morning.
Thank you, Mr. Silverstein. And for our last questioner on this round, Mr. McGregor, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to start with ICBC. It's great to see some fellow British Columbians join us at committee and to provide our West Coast perspective on this issue. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the bait car program because that did have remarkable success when it was first introduced. And I can remember at the time the BC government it seemed like they were actively trolling car thieves, daring them to go and steal a car, knowing that a bait car was out there tempting them to get caught. So that program we know from the Vancouver Police Service, like their press releases at the time, had remarkable success in driving down rates of auto theft. Can you just tell us, like, have those rates remained fairly consistent? Like, is the bait car program still sort of like owning a little bit of responsibility for keeping those rates low, or is it a broader question with a lot of different things at play here? If you could just sort of add a little bit more to that, please.
Yes, of course. Yes, so the Bait Car program is still a successful program. There's no doubt about it. But there's also many other aspects in terms of the impact, the team, and how they are integrated, different police units, different police departments, all involved in the proactive tackling of auto crime. So I think the important thing here is to remember that the impact program is an enhanced program in terms of fighting auto theft. So we're not just relying on the baseline enforcement of auto crime through the various police departments, but it's actually this concerted, data-driven program that's across the BC province. And of course, Bait Car is part of that program. So yes, Bait Car is very successful. We've seen a lot of auto crime go down due to that. But of course, there's always new tactics being employed by thieves and the new technology in vehicles as well. So it continues to have success. But in the space of the larger program impact, I think it's important to remember the integrated approach across BC has led to much success in this space.
In ICBC, I know that you offer discounts on premiums for anti-theft devices and vehicles. Is ICBC having to sort of re-examine that policy, given that, thieves seem to be easily able to overcome some of the standard anti-theft devices that are part of cars that are manufactured today? Is that something that the insurance industry as a whole is pressing the car manufacturers to do better on? Is that a big part of the conversation here?
Well, we've actually not seen the same increase in auto theft in BC. I hate to say this, but we're still actually have quite low rates compared to the rest of the country. And as I said, there's a number of different variables involved here. So we haven't seen fit to change our incentives in terms of anti-auto theft devices yet. And hopefully that remains the case, and that we continue to see a decline in auto theft over the last 5 years. And as Kelly was saying earlier, we've seen a recent decline as well, just from last year. So we have not been thinking about changing any of our insurance premiums as a result.
I'm just going to turn my last 2 minutes to the CAA. I've certainly appreciated the times BCAA has been there to help me on the side of the road, so we definitely know the value of your organization. But just sort of coming off of that conversation, when you look at insurance models in the rest of Canada, in provinces where auto theft is a growing concern, what is the CAA's position on, what role can insurance companies play in their conversations with auto manufacturers on offering discounts for anti-theft devices? If you can just add a little bit more to that conversation, I think that would be helpful.
Again, I'll turn to my colleague in a moment. This is what he does for a living, especially in recent months and years. But again, it shouldn't be up to your house insurance to take care of faulty door locks, because people who build homes can't be bothered to have proper locks on the front doors. We can do our part, and we do our part, and Elliot will speak to that in just a moment. But a lot of people have to do their job here, I think, and not just either insurers or individuals buying their own aftermarket anti-theft devices to try to stop from having their vehicle stolen. Elliot?
I think by and large, insurance companies have tried to do a lot thus far. We've tried to really focus on the most actively stolen vehicles so that it doesn't impact the entire population. In terms of their policies, I think the idea about working together on that is a noble one, and I think it's one that people would love to work on. But we need to get the manufacturers fully to the table, because they are at the table, but they need to do more in this to actually be part of that solution. Because right now, deferring it to saying it's an organized crime issue, while that is the epicenter of where it's coming from, saying that time and again doesn't get us to the end state. And we need to get to that end state as soon as we can, because we can't afford day after day paying out the claims that we're doing.
striking to me at the Auto Summit that we participated in, and a table even bigger than this one, everybody around the table said, mea culpa a little bit, we've got something to do, including CAA. As I said in the remarks, we need to do better consumer education. The only people at the table who, who took no responsibility at that time were the manufacturers.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony, all of you. We will now suspend for a couple of minutes just to enable you to leave and get our new witnesses ready. Thank you so much.